We're getting underway right here, right now. 6 players coming in, only 4 can make it to the next stage. There are going to be some broken hearts again. Here we go.
Yeah, let's get going now. Prayers out for the players, because this could be over before they know it. Only 8 round wins could be what is being played here. Only 8 rounds is the minimum, but one mistake is already off by Scrappy on reversing, which is one of his better maps. That is 1 round down the drain for the Belgian now. 5 players remaining in the race. Gwen in the lead ahead of Pack, and we have not seen Pack's pace on this. We have not seen CarlJr's pace on this, as they got very quickly through on the other tracks. Now we get to see how they stack up for the first time since the regular season. We do see Gwen in the lead, we do see Pack second, and Papou a little bit behind that again. This turn though, the technical turn on this track, they're pushing it so hard, going for all the speed they can get, and Papou is catching up quickly here to the leading 2 players. Up the jump we go, landing backwards and driving across the grass now. And in this first round, we are going to have the turnaround on the ice. Nobody's going to rocket into the finish backwards. That is a treat. For the second lap, looks like they all get the turnaround here. And on to lap number 2. It is Pack in the lead with a 1:04.65. This is incredibly fast right here. I want to remind you, the world record right now is a 2:04.8. And if Pack gets a good last lap here, then this is a world record pace run.
Yeah, this is good. This could be definitely WR run. That's an insane first lap coming in from Thomas Cole. Gwen, sorry, is down 2/10. I meant in P2. Then we got his fellow countryman Papou, a further 2/10 down, getting reeled in by Mudda in P4, currently challenging for P3. And CarlJr, who had a bit of a slow first lap, is down 7/10 on the leader. Meanwhile, Pack is currently looking super confident out here. Gwen taking a bit of bubble on the way in. Pack as well. Identity coming up right now. Coming up for the reverse jump. Did Pack make it? Yes, he did indeed make it. Gwen, meanwhile, a bit further behind. He gets reeled in by CarlJr. And actually, Gwen, a bit more speed than Pack. Heading into the final reverse. Oh, Gwen gets airtime, and Pack gets it nicely. 2:05.504 at the end. Not quite a WR1 potentially, but still a 1:00.340 at the end of this. And it will be Pack going on to finalists.
Yeah, and Pack in not getting the world record there like we anticipated. It was a slower lap too, but that opening lap was incredible. And I want to pay close attention to the ending there. We saw a new strategy come out from both Pack and CarlJr, where at the ending, at the backwards part, they went all the way to the right and kept grip with the hill. Scrappy with an early mistake once again. Not really getting it to work in the very first turn here. Just forced to sit that out, does not have the speed to continue or get anywhere near the top place here. But that last strat could be huge, not because it's much faster, but because it looked more consistent. As the car stays on the ground, you keep the grip, and you're not risking that jump where if you get a bad angle, you're out. So, very interesting approach, very close fight here too. Only 800s between 4 players in the top there. They're going across the grass, they're coming up for the jump now. And we'll see who can get the best speed out of this. Speed is king here, and that is going to be Pack, who claims the throne right now in this lap. Across the ice they go. Gwen with the inside line, but Pack should have a better angle for this turnaround, and boy does he do that beautifully. It's a 1:04.5, and this is actually unheard of. This is so much faster than what we've seen yesterday, and we are once again on world record pace here.
That first lap from Pack is looking absolutely insane, just like in the previous round. And Gwen, meanwhile, at the end of lap 1, has had to release a fair bit and dropped a lot of time in the J turn, and he got reeled in by CarlJr, who overtook him just a few seconds ago for P2. Currently, the reigning champion is trying his best to prevent possibly one of, arguably the title contender, the title favorite right here, from getting that early sit-outs right here in that early spot in the final 4. But who can stop Thomas Cole? It doesn't seem like anyone can actually do it. So far, it looks like Pack is on a good way. Identity coming up right now. Pack getting the slight turn of the car. Gwen getting more speed than CarlJr. He will try to overtake Pack before the Identity. Now coming up onto the reverse parts. And it seems as though, oh, Pack, this is looking good. And he wins again with a 2:04.947. He goes through to the final 4. Gwen second, Carl third, and Papou Scrapie and Mudda will not finish.
And what an amazing race. 2:04.9 is the second fastest time in the world. Only beaten by Mudda, as we know. on the time attack ranking. So yeah, once again we saw that end strategy. He keeps the grip on the surface. It seemed to work out beautifully, and CarlJr knows this as well. I don't think the other players have this strategy. They are jumping, which makes that ending considerably riskier. But now we've gotten through the start. This time we left one player behind. That was Gwen, but Scrappy has made it through here on one of his best tracks, and we'll see how he fares against CarlJr, against Mudda, and against Papou, some of the overall fastest players, and especially Mudda, the world record holder on this track. Packed though with those first laps is getting very, very close to contesting it. But it is Scrappy in the lead here, who, once he got past the start, shows what he's capable of. And this is really what the format is about. You can fail rounds as long as your overall pace is fast, as long as you're failing because you're trying to go really fast, trying to push it all, trying to win here. And Scrappy is doing a good job at that so far. Best start to this lap as they go down the grass now, backwards across the ice. Let's see who gets the best setup for the turnaround. It is actually Mudda here, who should be catching up considerably, and not just catching up, but completely leaving Scrappy behind here with a 10th of a gap down to the Belgian. Scrappy with more speed here though, equalizing it, and it is a dead even race between 3 players into the second lap here.
That ending from Mudda on lap 1 looks really, really good actually from the point of view that I had. Managing to make it a 2-for-1 deal at the end of it to get the lead into lap 2, but so far Scrappy still holding on nicely versus the Australian Penguin. And then we see also CarlJr going back into the frame. Only 3/10 between first and fourth right now, as we're seeing Scrappy still trying to keep the gap to around 2/10 of a second, trying to give himself a bit of room to breathe and not having anyone else breathing down his neck. Currently going through the identity right now. A bit of a bubble on the way in, I'd wager. A lot of a bubble on the way in for Papou, who catches a big time before the jump. Reversing onto the grass part. Scrappy in the lead. Papou having a bit less speed than Mudda. Mudda should be able to challenge for P2. Now onto the reversing part. Who's going to get it the best? And it seems as though Scrappy's got it down, and Papou will not make it to the finish. Mudda P2, Carl P3, and Papou with that ending mishap is down in P4, and Scrappy moves through the finalist status.
Yeah, and what a close round. Reversing really is showing up to be one of the most exciting Grand League maps, as it all comes down to that ending. We're just waiting to see what happens in that final jump. Really, really interesting developments with that new strategy. I did see CarlJr going for it. The others are still jumping. So only 2 players out of the top, the final 6 players here are aware of that. We'll see who makes it through and if they can maybe use it in future rounds. But the next track coming up now is going to be Bicycle, and it is picked by the one and only CarlJr, who has yet to score a round here in this top 6, but he is notoriously the 3-times world champion, the 5-times Ryder Cup champion, and also the 2-time Trackmania Grand League champion in a row here, looking for his 3rd. And this is the time to do it on your own map choice here in the top 6. Pack's already made it through. Scrappy's finalist. There's only 3 more spots, and if you want to go through and defend your title, this is when you have to do it on Bicycle here, CarlJr.
So, starting lap number 1 right away right here with Scrappy getting the best start after the freewheel jump. It's still looking pretty close so far, except for Papou, who just hit the wall before the jump between the trees, so that is going to be game over for the Gamers Origin driver. Meanwhile, Scrappy and Gwen are battling for the lead, and this could be important for Scrappy if he just needs to win one more round here on his strongest map, arguably, to get through to the final 4.
Yeah, Scrappy's gotten very, very fortunate here with the map order, getting both reversing, getting around it, very importantly, and now he has 3 chances to close it out on Bicycle. Gwen is keeping up though, Carl is keeping up, and in the frame behind CarlJr, we see Mudda, who is only 0.4 of a second behind. That could maybe be doable, but it's a dead even race between Gwen and Scrappy in the top 2 here. As we now go onto the ice, the players are going to try to get as much speed as possible on the boosters in the turnaround. Scrappy getting that first one very nicely, overtaking Gwen, but side by side they go into the second lap. CarlJr will be the 3rd player and Mudda be the 4th. This slide matters so much, and we see Gwen actually with a no jump strategy getting a lot of speed there, despite having not that much speed in the entry, so making it work for himself just behind Scrappy. As we're now into the second lap, only a few more turns remaining to see who takes this one.
We're heading into the second part of the map. Well, 11.383 was the opening lap from Scrappy, who looked pretty good out here. A 10.5 of a gap to Gwen in P2, 2/10 even before the entry to the dirt, and CarlJr is right behind the youngster trying to keep himself with the train up front, trying to keep himself relevant in the fight for the lead potentially, as we're going onto the jump right here. And Scrappy's looking supremely good right here with the gun that he has, currently maintaining it, but he's lost a little bit of ground before the reactive boost part. Now we're going on to the identity now. This is where players need to shine. Will Scrappy make it through, or will one of the other contenders deny? We're seeing CarlJr right now getting a bit more speed at the exit of that one, and we're seeing a battle between Scrappy and CarlJr. It's super close, and the Canadian takes the win and the fastest lap with a 2:17.536, with a 1:17.536, 2:19.170 at the end of it for CarlJr, who moves through the finalist status.
And what a race there. Valiantly fought by CarlJr, who was points two behind going into that last grass turn before the identity. Managing to catch Papou Scrapie just in the nick of time, that final turnaround being so decisive there with the additional speed. Scrappy getting robbed for one round there by CarlJr. There's still two more chances here on Scrappy's best map, but also CarlJr's choice. And they still have to fend off three other of the best players in the world here. So this is such a stacked lineup. Very close here into the second round, though CarlJr finding himself at a little bit of a deficit. 0.3 now behind Gwen and the others up front. Getting up back a little bit, but Papou has had to respawn. He's out of the race. It's a four-way battle as we now go on to the jump here. Who is going to risk and go all the way to the right? CarlJr looks to be the man to do it, just next to the tree there. Brushing against the leaves a little bit, still making it. Into the grass we go now. Scrappy in the lead. Gwen is tied up right next to him. It's a deja vu of the first round with Carl and Mudda third and fourth. But we know that much can still happen in the second lap as we're shooting across the booster. It is a dead repeat of the first round, but much closer this time around.
Oh, Scrappy taking to the cones as he crossed the freewheel, and Scrappy's getting denied yet again due to a single mistake, and CarlJr having made a mistake as well. Gwen is stopped on the track. What happened to Gwen? And Mudda is going to be a win by KO for the Australian Penguin. Mudda takes the win. Unless we might get a round skip.
No, it was just mistakes here that happened, nothing else. Gwen jumping into the sign, and both CarlJr and Scrappy faltering to the technical turn. Mudda getting a free round, and he's going to take that one into finalist status. Now it's getting intense. We have 3 players in finalist status, only 3 spots available, remaining in the final 4. And Gwen and Papou, the 2 friends players, are without a round so far. This is when it starts to get very important for them to get a round if they want to advance through, because they are on the back foot right now. Last round of Bicycle. Scrappy and CarlJr's favorite map, and Papou does have really good pace on paper, despite going very unnoticed here and also making a mistake into the third round. Will not get his work here. Has to wait around for the next map now. 4 players remain. Mudda a bit on the back foot. It is Scrappy, Gwen, and CarlJr in a tied race here. Halfway through the first lap. Going on to the jump now. Scrappy trying to minimize airtime. Should actually be rewarded here with additional speed, despite finding himself behind the 2 others, as we're now going across the grass into the identity, the ice turnarounds. Speed is king here. You want to get as much as possible off the booster without falling off the edge, and they're doing it here to a great degree. CarlJr, though, running a little bit away with it here versus the others. Will hold the lead into the second lap. Scrappy and Gwen just behind. This turn is so decisive. They are going to push here. They all make it. And now we have a race on our hands. CarlJr, Gwen, and Scrappy into the second lap.
CarlJr currently having the lead of less than a tenth over Gwen. Gwen is harassing. He's harassing the Canadian. Look at this. They're really, really close with each other right here. Scrappy is also here waiting in the wings, waiting to pounce. And he's currently trying to keep himself afloat, trying to keep himself in the fight. And he's grilling in Gwen for P2. Coming up into the dirt part right now, CarlJr getting a little bit less speed than Gwen on the entry. How much will you get in terms of exit speed? Roughly similar, so it's still a neck-and-neck battle between the 2. Papou having made a mistake early. Mudda as well are out of the running. Scrappy going really close to the tree, brushing a bit of the leaves on the way in, and currently still looking in P3. It's going to be the identity to the side. Reactive boost entry. It's going to be super close. Look at this. They're neck and neck. Gwen versus CarlJr. Gwen can be the one to make the dream last a little bit longer for himself. Scrappy and CarlJr both need to win the round in order to stay relevant. Scrappy's hit the wall, so he's going to be out of it. And CarlJr versus Gwen will be the Canadian who moves through into the final 4.
And CarlJr shows up once again. This is why he's world champion 3 times. This is why he's Tmgl champion 2 times in a row. He steps up when it matters most in such a close round into the identity. Everyone equal on pace. He delivers the goods and qualifies himself into the top 4. Only 2 spots remain now, and we are going on to the next map. It is going to be Slalom, picked by Pack, who advanced already. CarlJr, another one of the fastest players who advanced already. Anything can happen now on the 3rd map.
Anything can happen, and it could be either a really clean race or a fiesta here on Nadeo's Slalom. Typically, we've had I want to make a bit of a focus again on Scrappy, the Belgian player. He's had 2 of his strongest maps already moving through, and now it is coming onto one of his arch nemesis. How will he cope?
Yeah, and let's not forget, if we looked at the time attack rankings just before the match here, Gwen set a personal best on this track just 3 hours ago, right before the match. A 2:06.7, if memory serves me right. So Gwen, one of the fastest players in the field here. He did pick this as his first map, I think tactically though, more than favoring it over the others. But now Gwen has a chance to come back. This is a good map for him, definitely. And 2 of the strongest players are out of the race that he has to fend off. Scrappy and Mudda. Scrappy and Mudda, especially the world record holder here, and one of the best ice players in the field, is going to be a looming threat though. As we're going into the slalom part, Mudda hitting the wall will drop down in the field half a second behind, and that might be too much to do anything in this round. Papou jumping into the wall. It's now down to a 1v1. Gwen versus Scrappy, and Scrappy has a beautiful chance here to make something happen on Slalom, perhaps his worst map. Now just 1 player between him and the round win, and we're going up the ice slope. Can Gwen hit the turnaround? They both hit it here, and the race continues now into the 2nd lap. 0.2 of a difference as they go for the jump. Gwen makes it on the right side, Scrappy a bit more into the middle, and this is not over.
Not over yet indeed. Scrappy keeping the fight fair with 3/10 of a deficit between himself and Gwen. He can still manage to catch that up. Meanwhile, Mudda and Papou are completely out of the fight. Mudda even outside of the 10-second range, might not even be able to make it to the finish. So yeah, we're gonna have to see how this lap unfolds and unwinds here for both Gwen and Scrappy. Remember, it's not all easy at the final part, and the ice turn, anyone can slide off the map, like we've seen during the final chance of for instance, or during the OGL. It could very well happen right here. It's happened in the regular season, it can happen in the playoffs, but so far Gwen is currently untouchable. 0.6 of a second of a gap to Scrappy in P2. Papou having retired already, 0.7. The gap continues increasing. Gwen is going through onto the ice turn now. Does not get lost of grid, does not touch the CP, and it should be good for Gwen. He goes through to the slalom and will win the opening round to move through into finalist status with a 2:07.287. Scrappy in 2nd place will be the only other player finishing, as Mudda is too far from the finish window and Papou has retired.
And we are getting so close to having a decisive result in this match now. 3 players are finalists, 2 more can go through. Gwen, Mudda, and Scrappy all just 1 round away from securing it. But they have to do it soon. They're running out of potential rounds. They have to win now, or they could be out. Very, very close opportunity for Scrappy in that last round. Just losing a little too much time to Gwen in the regular parts of the track, while his identity was actually close to perfect in that 2nd lap. But here we go. It is a new chance. Mudda and Papou cannot afford to crash like they did in the 1st round here. They really got to stay on par with the others and try to win out in the identity, in the ice part, where there will surely be some mistakes. The way these players are playing, the way they are risking. Papou, the only player right now to not win a round, and he will not win this one. We will have our 3rd advancement here. Who is it going to be though? Scrappy currently in 1st, Gwen in 2nd, Mudda in 3rd, or make that just a dead even race as we're coming towards the identity in the 1st lap. Who is going to stay on the track here? Who's going to keep the grip? Now that it matters most, Gwen sliding out. It's Mudda versus Scrappy, and Scrappy's just found another opportunity at a 1v1 on his worst map, but it is against the world record holder, and Mudda is soaring like a bird, like a penguin that can fly into the 2nd lap in the lead. looking for the top 4 here in his first Grand League season. He is just 1 lap away from doing it here.
We might not get a Frenchman in the final 4 just yet. Gwen might be having his a little bit of fragility maybe in the mindset coming in right now. There as a further playoff spot could be in jeopardy right here. Meanwhile, it is the Australian Penguin Mudda 3/10 ahead of Scrappy in P2, heading into the first dirt slalom right here. Very tight and twisty right here. Nicely done. Now onto the reactive boost spot where we saw Papou fall 2 for 2 in the space of a few rounds right here. And Scrappy makes the first mistake. He's off the track, and that's going to be potentially it with Mudda moving up into the lead. Gwen half a second down, could still take advantage of the mistake by the Australian at the final part. Let's actually see at the ice turn. No loss of grip for Mudda. Gwen touches the CP and it's game over potentially. The final slalom, and Mudda is their 3rd player to go through into the final 4. 1 spot left and even more heartbreak will ensue.
Yeah, Mudda clutching it there. He's made it top 3. We will have 1 more player moving through here. It could be decided here already. Scrappy and Gwen are both finalists. They're 1 round away, while Papou would have to chain together 2 wins in a row here to clutch the advancement for himself. But we are potentially just 1 round away, and now is the time to step it up. Now is the time that matters the most. If you get into the top 4, you're already guaranteed into the money in the competition and potentially a shot at the trophy. So very, very decisive round here. A lot at stake. You can feel the tension as they're going through the turns. A bit safer than they usually do. No one wants to be the first mistake here and be out of the fight. Papou, Gwen, and Scrappy all tied up as we go up the slalom part and go towards the decisive ice part. This might be where it is decided here. This ice uphill. Who can keep the grip? Who can get the best slide? And who can go into the second lap here in first place? Here we go. Up the hill, and let's see what happens now. Gwen is in the lead. Papou setting up wide, releasing, making sure that he gets the grip, and they all have gotten through here. Despite being a little bit behind, Papou will jump right back up, and we're dead even into the second lap. This is going to be interesting here. Gwen, Scrappy, and Papou all fighting here for survival.
The battle for the final spot is still going really hot right here. Gwen has the lead, but for how long can he actually maintain it? They're still within 1/10 of each other right now. Scrappy and Papou battling for P2. Gwen in the lead can get reeled in at any moment here, at any point in the track. A single deviation off the line that you have, it could be completely gone for the Frenchman. And so far it's Papou who makes the first quote-unquote mistake, slight deviation, and he's down to P3. And you see a battle between the 2 finalists, Gwen and Scrappy, who are currently 1st and 2nd. Papou is not too far though. Let's actually see over the reactive boost part who's the first to make the mistake. Nobody's building an 8-foot wrong right here. Oh, and Gwen goes off and he slides and touches the wall. That's it. Papou could be the one to deny and keep the dream alive just for 1 more round. Can Scrappy prevent that from happening and try to get that win on his hands? Oh, a bit of loss of grip. It will not be enough to catch Papou unless he touches a pole, and it will not be enough. Papou goes through the finalist, or will he? He will go to finalist with a 206.917. We've got the final round coming up on the next map for the final spots.
And a beautiful comeback there from Papou. He keeps the dream alive. And now we're going on to a sudden death round on Arctic Split. And this, believe it or not, is actually one of Papou's best tracks in the Grand League season. He was one of the fastest players here when it was played in the regular season. If he can chain together 2 fast laps here on Arctic Split, he could make the dream a reality and secure that 4th spot. It's all coming down to this. Gwen, Scrappy, and Papou fighting for that 1 spot in 1 round is how it will be decided. Here we go.
Sudden death coming up. Belgium versus France. 1 versus 2. Potentially for Belgium to actually knock out one nation entirely from the Grand League playoffs. And despite the armada of French players, it could still end right there right now if Scrappy can actually get that on Arctic Split. Here we go.
And let's pay very close attention to this first ice slide, because a lot can be decided here already. The player's going to try to keep the gear of the car on the ice turn, but if they fail it, that's already half a second lost. And we can see Papou sliding off. Papou is out of the fight. It will be either Scrappy or Gwen here. Papou has faltered in the very first corner, trying to keep that gear but failing. Scrappy's going to try to keep the gear here, but they both drop it, I think. And they're going at equal speed through the wall right now. Side by side into the uphill drift here. You need to get a lot of speed, and we know there is a strategy coming up on this next dirt part where they're gonna try to jump to the left of the pillar. Will Scrappy dare to risk it here in the most decisive round so far in the tournament? He's going out He's not going to the left. He's not risking that jump. So he's taking it with precaution here. And now it's just a few more corners before we're coming up to the identity on Arctic Split. 3 jumps between pillars is what is coming up here. And 1 mistake will mean your opponent beats you by knockout. So let's see here. These jumps have to be as precise as ever. The first one comes through.
Oh my god!
Losing speed. He's over 1.2 seconds behind. If Scrappy extends this to 1.5 seconds, it could be a knockout. And he is in the knockout range. 1 checkpoint. There is 2, and the multi-lap will make it 3. Scrappy is your 4th finalist here. Most likely. There it is. Scrappy advances. Scrappy advancing by knockout on Arctic Split.